briefly talk about the enzymes involved in the whole digestive system. Okay, I'm not going to go into any more details than that. All right. So as you take food into your mouth, okay. Food is broken down. Food is now mixed with saliva. Parotid gland over here. Saliva. So once the food is mixed with saliva, this becomes a bolus. The enzyme that is secreted by the saliva is called salivary amylase. And the function of salivary amylase, so now start making that list also. For enzymes, so let's say name of that enzyme. Now, name should include both inactive and its active form. Okay. You need to know the source of that enzyme. Okay. You need to know what stimulates let's say stimulation for secretion. You need to know what the function of those enzymes are. If there's a target for those enzymes, put that down also. Okay. And then if it has an inactive form, what activates it? Okay. So let's say for salivary amylase, I'm sure there's an inactive form. We didn't talk about it, so you guys don't really have to know it. Okay. So name salivary amylase, source inside the saliva, or you can be really specific and say parotid gland. Okay. Oh, and also site of activity. This is important. All right. So salivary amylase source is the parotid gland, and it's going to be secreted due to what stimulates the parotid gland to secrete? Chewing. Okay. So mastication and things like that. Breaking down, physically breaking down the food particles causes the parotid gland and other salivary glands to secrete salivary amylase into that bolus of food. Okay, and that function, it works inside the oral cavity. Okay, because the pH inside the oral cavity is optimal for the activities of the salivary amylase. Right? And its function. Down starch. Okay, so once this food particle has been broken down, it starts to move down the pharynx, the oral pharynx, all the way down to the esophagus. Okay. Now, movement of a food particle downstream inside the GI tract is called what? Peristalsis. Mixing of that food particle within a GI tract, that's segmentation. Okay, awesome. All right, so once that food bolus gets here and moves into the stomach, there are a lot of important cells inside the stomach that you guys need to know. So once the food particle, once the bolus moves into the stomach, it causes that stretch in the stomach. Okay? That stretch in the stomach is going to stimulate the first cell here. Okay, well, the first cell here. It doesn't have to be like the first cell in the line, but the first important cell that sets up the whole system, right? So this is called the G cell. Now the G cell secretes what? Okay. Now it's pretty easy, right? G, gastrin. Whoa. I know, genius. All right, gastrin is going to go into the blood, and it's going to flow toward other cells inside the stomach. Okay. It's going to influence the next cell here, called the ECL cell. Right. So gastrin is going to flow there. ECL secretes histamine. Okay. Histamine is going to influence its neighboring cell, and this is the parietal cell. does the parietal cell secrete? HCl. HCl. Good. Parietal cell, well, and then there's another cell here. This is called your chief cell. Now, what stimulates the chief cell? Gastrin. Gastrin. So gastrin can stimulate the chief cells, right? Or acid can also stimulate the chief cells. Now, the chief cell is going to secrete pepsinogen. All right, so that's another enzyme that we need to put down. So pepsinogen is going to become pepsin due to hydrochloric acid. So you have to have hydrochloric acid because pepsin cannot work in a different pH range. Okay, so pepsin works in the pH range around 2. 2 is actually its optimal activity. Right? 3, 4, it starts to become denatured. All right, so that's pepsin. Now, where's the site of pepsin activity? In the stomach. Why in the stomach? Because it can only operate at pH of 2. Okay. All right, so pepsin's there, and what is the function of pepsin?
Digest protein.
Digest protein. Good. Right. But Robert also said an important thing. Pepsin also comes back and activates other pepsinogen to become more pepsin. Okay. But the overall function of pepsin, why we activate pepsinogen in the first place, is to digest these complex proteins into smaller protein particles. All right. Now, the acidic juices that mix with this bolus of food that is going to give you chyme. This chyme now moves from the stomach into the small intestine. Now, the funny thing about our system is that sometimes it's not wired to be the most efficient. The environment of the stomach is about a pH of 2. The environment of the small intestine is about a pH of 6. Okay? That's a 4-fold difference. So quickly, as soon as all this chyme moves into the small intestine, all the acidity must be neutralized very, very quickly. Okay? So a lot of different enzymes and a lot of different hormones help to do that, and we'll talk more about that on Tuesday. Okay? So as this chyme moves into the small intestine, one of the things that is being secreted again is bicarbonate ion. Okay, bicarb ion immediately will neutralize some of the acidity and bring the pH rapidly up to about 6 or something like that. Okay. Because some of the enzymes that are going to be released into the small intestine can only operate at that pH level. Oh, also, this bolus is carrying with it some of that salivary amylase from the mouth. So once salivary amylase enters the stomach, what happens to it? It becomes denatured. Okay. All right, so this kind of moves into the small intestine. At the small intestine, there's 2 hormones here called CCK and secretin. Okay, that's going to sense this acidity that comes in. And what it does is it's going to stimulate the pancreas to secrete bicarbonate ion and digestive enzymes, okay, or pancreatic juices. And it's also going to go to the liver and the gallbladder and tell the liver and gallbladder to secrete bile. All right, we'll talk about that on Tuesday after the quiz. So some of the enzymes that are secreted from the pancreas includes one very important one. So this enzyme called trypsinogen, one of the major enzymes secreted from the pancreas, moves into the small intestine. But if you see the ogen, this represents an immature or inactive enzyme. So what activates this? So remember the brush border enzymes that I talked about briefly, right? There's like millions of them that you guys don't have to know except for one. Okay. And that brush border enzyme is called enterokinase. This is a brush border enzyme. So this important brush border enzymes activates all the trypsinogen by doing what? It has a kinase in its name. You guys remember what a kinase does? Stick a phosphate onto that protein, right? You stick a phosphate onto this trypsinogen, all of a sudden it loses this last name and it gets married and becomes trypsin. Changes its name altogether. Hey, now I got a phosphate, I don't care, I don't need to be an ogen. Okay, so it becomes an active form called trypsin. Trypsin is one of the more important ones because what it does, it will come back and activate other trypsinogen and other digestive enzymes that are coming from the pancreas. Okay. Function of trypsin: digest proteins. So it's one of the major proteinase, so enzymes that digest proteins inside the small intestine. Okay. So site of activity of trypsin, small intestine. All right. Pancreas also secrete amylase. Okay. We know what amylase does, break down starch. But this amylase is coming from the pancreas, so we call it pancreatic amylase. To differentiate it from salivary amylase. Because salivary amylase operate at a different pH level, pancreatic amylase operates at a different pH level. Secreted by two different sources, okay. But it does the same thing. It breaks down. So, but this one, because now you're in the small intestine, some of the starch has been broken down. So amylase is going to break down carbohydrates. Then there's another enzyme called lipase, also secreted from the pancreas into the small intestine. Lipase works together with bile that is secreted from the gallbladder and liver. Bile helps to emulsify the fat, remember, okay? So you eat a lot of triglyceride. Triglyceride is the dietary form of fatty acids. That bile is going to help emulsify some of those fatty acids, some of those triglycerides, and allow lipase to come in and cut that triglyceride into a glycerol and two fatty acid chains. Okay? So lipase functions to break it down. So now, essentially, I know we only talk about these. There's a lot more proteins inside the body, but we don't need to talk about all those proteins. Bless you. So now you know, inside the small intestine, you have three major proteins that breaks down the three major sources of food, right? Trypsin is going to break down your protein inside the small intestine. Pancreatic amylase is going to break down your carbohydrate inside the small intestine. Lipase is going to break down your triglycerides into fatty acids inside the small intestine. So that's why in the small intestine, that's where you have the major chemical digestion that's going on. Once you've digested all these food, the process of taking all these nutrients from the digestive tract into the blood, this is called absorption. Okay? Not to be confused with reabsorption. Why are you reabsorbing here? Because you filtered it out in the first place. Okay? This is new material. New stuff that's coming in that you've worked so hard to break down inside your mouth and your stomach. So this new stuff that's coming in, you want to absorb it, to store it, right? So that's the main difference, absorption versus reabsorption.
What's the stimulation for secretion?
For what?
For those enzymes.
For lipase?
That would be.
So for lipase, it will be triglyceride, right? So high fatty food. So you go out after this class and you run to McDonald's, let's just say. Right? Pretty good stuff. I mean, makes me hungry now. So yeah, you're gonna have some lipase being secreted. Okay. Of course, depends on what you get at McDonald's, right? Obviously, if you get a sandwich, that amylase is also gonna be secreted. So basically, if you eat a balanced diet, all of these enzymes are gonna be secreted to help break down all this food contents. You go home and drink lard? Yes. You sure? Don't do it, but yeah, if you just happen to, because that's the only thing you have in your fridge. Yeah, lipase is going to be working overtime. Plus, it's a lot of bile is going to be excreted out. Now, for you guys that had your gallbladder removed, basically after you remove your gallbladder, you have no storage for your bile. So all the bile that you make coming from the liver will have to be made instantaneously and secreted out as soon as you have a lot of fatty contents moving into your small intestine. But it takes a while for the liver to make bile and excrete it out, right? So that's why the gallbladder stores it in the first place. So, but if you don't have a gallbladder, you need to decrease your fatty food content. Otherwise, if you don't, well, you better invest in a lot of air freshener. It's absolutely true. If you know anybody that had their gallbladder removed, do not follow them in the bathroom. It's pretty bad. Good. Any questions? And the rest of the process, you guys should know. Yes.
How is fiber broken down?
Fiber?
Yeah.
Fiber doesn't really get broken down too much, but what happens is that fiber, it absorbs a lot of water, so therefore it will make the stool a lot softer to allow the stool to move a lot easier through the digestive tract, right? So especially inside the large intestine and stuff like that. So large intestine, its function is to absorb water, right? Or whatever water is left, or whatever the body needs to increase the water amount. But that fiber content is going to have this osmotic effect, which is going to pull water more towards the side. And that's going to allow for the stool to move easier throughout the large intestine.
So like constipated.
Constipated people. Fibers, we don't really absorb it too much. I think because it has